think next year when we review the calendar at the beginning of the year, we really had to consider the July meeting. Do we really want to have a July meeting again? Because it's always quiet, and I know I would be in Big Bear right now if not for this meeting. Yeah, like we bought a place in Fawnskin in 2012. So Dad had a plane that he was flying back and forth to Sacramento, and at some point when that stopped because he was no longer going to Sacramento, he realized that the cabin would hold a lot more people than the plane. So we sold the plane, got a cabin. Love it. Yeah. I thought about it, especially as I was looking at my calendar, but well, I have to be here for admin anyways. I could have, but you know the problem is that the not even the Wi-Fi up there works very well. In fact, it's barely a cell phone connection up there. So trying to get anything other than calling in would have been difficult. We had an item that we needed 3 votes on today, so didn't know we really needed them that bad. But okay.
I've never had anybody interested in that, but you're
Oh wow. From there. Yeah. I could see doing that. All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's a little past 11:30. Well, 15 seconds, but we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start with any opening remarks and go around the room. Go ahead. Felipe from Maywood, there we go. Paul?
Paul Avila Associates. Good morning, what's left of it?
Rita Lou, Tech International.
David Rothbart, Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts.
Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance.
Jeff Blake, Metal Finishers Association and Small Business Alliance.
Nancy Feldman, Counsel's Office.
Derek knows to come down, right? Is Derek on his way, or?
He's in a meeting with Wayne. Right?
Oh, he is? Okay. Hopefully he'll get here soon. Go ahead, David.
Hi, Fabian Wesson, South Coast SCAQMD.
John DeWitt, J.A. DeWitt Incorporated.
Very good. I would normally ask Derek this if there's any review or follow-up, but we'll ask him later.
There is someone here to.
Oh. Who's taking over for Derek?
There was someone here to do the review of action items. He said he would be here. That's it.
Jeff had some problems getting rules by email. They were getting rejected, so we're putting him in touch with Dave from our IM staff to
Work on that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Lori. That was it for as far as action follow-up items.
Very good. All right, on to item number 4, Rule 1147, NOx reductions. Tracy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here to talk briefly about a rule amendment that we had last week and some of our outreach efforts that are going to come out of that. So welcome everybody this morning. Last Friday, July 7th, we amended Rule 1147. So I'm going to go through that a little bit and talk about some of our future actions. But just to give you a little bit of background, the rule was adopted in December of 2008. Its target was to set NOx emission standards for miscellaneous combustion equipment that was not already covered by other rules. It was amended back in 2011, and out of that came 3 things. One was the separation of food ovens and the adoption of Rule 1153.1. Another was amendments to Rule 219 and 222 for portable equipment, and then a technology assessment that focused on small and low emission sources, generally those that are less than a pound per day. Also, if you recall back in February, I did present the findings of our technology assessment. That technology assessment is really the primary driver for the amendments that occurred last week. The technology assessment had a series of findings. We did have a third-party review as committed by our executive officer. And that review confirmed staff's findings, but also had an additional recommendation that we incorporated. So those changes went into the amendment that went in last Friday. So the amendments do reflect those findings. The most important thing that came out of those amendments is we had a July 1st trigger date for a lot of the small combustion sources that would have kicked in and affected more than 5,000 combustion sources. But as a result of the tech assessment, we found that it was not, in many cases, was not either technologically feasible or economically feasible for those sources to comply. So we removed that requirement. Some of the other things we did were focusing on the low emission combustion units. It was less than a pound per day. Essentially, for all existing sources, they got relief that we removed the in-use requirement. If they do replace the unit or the burner is replaced, they would have to meet the emission limits that are in the rule, but if they don't do that for this time, they don't have to worry about trying to meet those limits. We did have a replacement requirement that was extended from 20 to 35 years. Actually, staff proposed 30 years, and Governing Board Member Mitchell extended that to 35 years, which was approved by the board. But another key finding is we had been working with stakeholders, Bill Lamar included, and along with some other folks, that really talked about, how long can this equipment last? After 35 years, is it emitting more than a pound per day? So what we've done is we've added an option that if they can demonstrate that they're still under a pound per day, then they would not have to meet those emission limits and not have to replace the equipment. One of the other elements was for low-use combustion units, looking at those that are less than 325,000 BTU per hour. These units could actually operate 24 hours a day, and we do not believe they would exceed a pound per day, which is, pound per day is the backed requirement. So except for the record-keeping requirement, those sources will no longer be required to meet the emission limits within the rule. A couple other elements that came out of the tech assessment that were incorporated in the amendments. We increased the NOx limit from 30 ppm to 60 ppm for afterburners, incinerators, and burn-off ovens. Those changes were consistent with those recommendations and the findings of our third-party assessment. We did some site visits and looked at pressure washers and tanks and found that it was not technically feasible to retrofit those units. So requirements for emission limits would only be on the new units. And then we added a testing exemption for infrared burners. We did add some compliance flexibility. There were a number of ways that we felt that you could demonstrate that you were less than a pound per day, including the use of meters for fuel or burner hours. So those options were included, including also another option where if somebody had another way to determine they were less than a pound per day, they could come to the staff and demonstrate that. We also added a emission certification option for the less than 2 million BTU per hour units. If the manufacturer actually had 5 source tests that demonstrated compliance with the rule, that could be done in lieu of the manufacturers seeking certification under the rule. And then we also did some additional testing options for the low temperature ovens. But a couple of things that came out of the work that we did, and particularly in the last couple of months, were concerns raised about the availability of compliant burners. The rule allows for certification by the manufacturers. Unfortunately, we only have one burner manufacturer that's actually gone through the process of certification, and it's been certified for 14 different manufacturers of heaters, principally those that are used in spray booths. Another issue that came up is we had a facility operator that had raised issues with regards to temperature control. It really kind of boiled down to burner versus control system for the heater that was installed by the manufacturer and the installer. We are continuing to work with the operator, but the burner manufacturer has offered to replace the burner, which should give better temperature control. There still may need to be some work with the control system, and concerns about needing to have a permit modification. Staff is working with that individual. When this issue of the temperature control came to staff's attention, it was really new information to us. So we did an informal survey and contacted a number of facility operators. The majority that we contacted did not appear to have similar issues and had expressed positive experience with the performance of the units, although it may not be that way with all cases, but it was generally favorable. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure everybody is aware of, particularly the burner manufacturers, is that when we founded the certification program under Rule M47, we made funding available to reimburse the manufacturers for the certification process. You know, they do the testing, they take it to a lab, the lab does the certification. They could actually then apply for those costs to be reimbursed to them. And one of the governing board directives that came from Board Member Mitchell was for staff to work with burner manufacturers to make sure they're aware of the available funding and then try to get more manufacturers certified under the rule and therefore have more choices for the end users. Another element that we've talked with stakeholders about is doing enhanced outreach, particularly for the smaller facilities. Those facilities that are small businesses may not be very savvy about how to comply with district rules and deal with the agency. So we wanted to be able to do some outreach to help them. And of course, including the available burner options. Some of these directions that we got did come from the board and as part of the governing board adopted resolution. We will work with the stakeholders. We're working with Bill Lamar's team, Furnace Dynamics, the gas company, and the printing industry to develop these materials to make them available. But we're going to do this in 3 different phases. The first phase is we want everybody to be aware that July date is no longer in effect. So actually today we are beginning to mail out a 7,500 mailings that are going out. The envelopes, this is an example, just to get their attention, says new regulatory action, so that they'll be able to do that and look at that. And then we have a 1-page notice to let everybody know, and then also to give them contact information in the event that they have some questions. The second phase is to really put staff efforts in the next couple of months to notifying the burner manufacturers. The board asks that we do this expeditiously. The stakeholders have committed to helping us with identifying potential manufacturers that could certify under the rule. But also, you know, we believe with our work on the EFMP, there may be some burner manufacturers that have a technology that may be transferable, that we're going to talk to them about potentially doing some testing under Rule 1147 to see if maybe those technologies can add to the menu of options that will be available to the stakeholders. So our third phase is actually going to be done in 2 parts. First, we intend on doing a kind of a trifold pamphlet to start informing people and making it available to the regulated community. But then on a more longer term, we're going to develop an implementation guidance document similar to what the gas company had already created and is on their website now, to actually create a document that would help guide the regulated community through the requirements of the rule to explain the different options that are available to them. And we believe that this is going to be a very good tool, and hopefully that online guidance document, we should have something out by the end of the year. But we're going to work extensively with our stakeholders in the development of those. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll be able to answer any questions.
Tracy, a couple of questions. One,
Sure.
it wasn't that long ago where all these big burner manufacturers, you could name them on one hand, like a GAF or O'Keefe, all the big boys. In the process, a couple of them have gone broke, like GAF from some of my industrial clients. But what do you do with, what's AQMD's position in a company that went out of business or has been bought and subsidized or merged, and a lot of those parts aren't around anymore, as far as keeping the original piece of equipment in operation?
Yeah.
And also, let's say like Bill's Association, let's say it doesn't last for 35 years or 40 years. It's only good for 20. Okay? And is there a replacement from the manufacturer that'll fit in that little circumference?
Well, that's one reason why we did these amendments, because we found that for retrofitting, the configurations really didn't work and didn't, you know, when it came to replacing the burners, just to be able to do the burner. So, you know, and trying to retrofit those was not going to be cost effective either. So when it comes to doing the turnaround, hopefully by going through the certification process, we'll have a lot of options available to them. When it comes to a burner manufacturer that may have gone out of business and there's no longer any parts, I'm not sure what we can do about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. With it's been about 3 months shy of 6 years that we've worked on this rule, and on issues that could have been really corrected in one or two meetings if there was a will to do that. And for that, I really appreciate Tracy's leadership. Tracy wasn't here in the beginning, nor was Wayne Nastry at the time. But
Real quick question. Tracy, did you lose a bet to get this after the first 4 years, or how did this wind up on your desk?
well, Tracy was here, but he wasn't involved in this.
Right.
rule.
Yeah, I've been here 29 years, but it really came to my desk when Joe retired,
Right.
and I took on greater responsibilities in my position.
Yeah.
So
But
I don't know. I don't know
God
if
bless
it's. I don't know if it was. There wasn't a bet that I'm aware of. So
I don't know.
I just
know.
try to
I
do-
know. I wore a path in the carpet from the lobby to stationary source and back.
I
again.
just try to do my best to work with everybody to get good solutions.
And we really appreciate it, and I guess, if anything can be learned out of this, it's that we should have negotiated rulemaking. My former appointer, Norma Glover, Chairman Glover at the time, she was the one that first introduced negotiated rulemaking in Jeff's rule, 1469, when she was here, and it worked great. It's never come back since. But a couple of the issues that were most important to us is, one, breaking this monopoly up where you had a single burner manufacturer, and hopefully we'll get more interested manufacturers come in and participate. Low NOx burners is a fairly mature technology, 30, 40 years old. So I mean, it's not cutting edge. The other thing, of course, is the under a pound a day, the demonstration of their emissions for less than a pound a day. We had hoped and proposed a 5-year intervals. Again, at Board Member Mitchell's direction, it stayed at 2 years. But I'm hopeful too. I know it was the intention of the board to seek a less costly option than a full-fledged source test. And both Wayne and Tracy have committed to working together and finding ways that we can do this from $4,000 to $7,000 down to maybe $1,000 or less for these folks to do that. So those are some of the issues that I felt that we came away from this. I won't say victorious, but in a lot better shape than we were 6 years ago.
Mr. Chair, just to answer that, we didn't really get into it much at the governing board meeting, but the rule requirements under source testing elements do provide a mechanism where we believe we should be able to work with handheld monitors and maybe work with Carbon EPA on a maybe modified protocol to make it a lot cheaper to demonstrate that less than a pound per day.
And I should say one thing too. I've had some informal talks with the gas company, and all of these permittees are also customers of the gas company. And while it would take a major commitment by an officer of that company to do this testing, to take that on as a customer service or something like that, but they're at least willing to talk about it. And I've been talking with Lauren Nevitt and some of the other folks over there. So it's an option that they're considering and we're talking about, and we'll explore it further. So.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to echo one of the comments that Bill made. Thankfully, most of our processes don't employ heaters, so we don't have to deal with 1147, but I certainly feel for the people who do. On the issue of the negotiated rulemaking, I definitely think that as part of the process, the district should definitely embrace that idea. And it just dawned on me that I remember those days of when we wouldn't industry and the district, we wouldn't get, no side would get 100% of everything, but we could at least go to the board with a formal position. Where now, especially if you've been watching the last few board meetings, you're seeing more and more engagement from the board members, and kudos to them for making motions, for getting into the nitty gritty of the rule. Kudos to them. I mean, I'm very thankful for the board members. I am thankful for the board assistants. But in an ideal world, they wouldn't need to work so hard if we all just reached consensus and came to the board with an agreement. Because in my view, some of the things that industry is requesting are not really that unreasonable and shouldn't have to take a battle at the board meeting. So I definitely encourage that approach. Thank you, Bill, for bringing that up.
Part of that process that they referenced, because I was around back then, is when we had meetings out in the community where we actually had a moderator that would actually try to get both sides and try to find what the commonalities were. So, yeah, I can't remember his last name either. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions? If not, we'll go on to the next item. Update on Rule 430, Scott Caso. Caso? Did I get it any close? Oh, why does it have Scott in it? So, is the helmet like a prop, or are you worried about the building, or? Oh, okay.
Well, where's our helmet?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Click on the base of the thing, it'll turn.
All right. Good morning, everybody. The local government and small business assistance advisory group, and also chairman or committee chair. My name is Phil Hubbard, not Scott Caso. We work as a team in enforcement, so I'm going to give you some information as far as our team in dealing with Rule 430, breakdown notifications, and the district response procedures. There are some similar provisions that also go with Rule 430, and those provisions are 2004 and also 3002 dealing with Title V. You'll find the same language pretty much in both of these rules as you do find in 430. How is this applied? It applies to any breakdown which results in a violation of any rule or permit condition not specified in sub paragraphs little b, 3, large b. And those are the breakdown provisions not applicable. And some of those are your regulations that deal with your niche apps, your new source standard performance, toxics, prevention of significant deterioration, acid rain programs, also Rule 219 and Rule 402, which is a nuisance. Notification requirements. Facilities shall report any breakdown by phone or any approved method which results in a violation of any rule or permit condition, except for the ones we mentioned earlier. When within 1 hour of such breakdown or within 1 hour of the time a said person knew or should have reasonably known of this occurrence. Continuing on notifications. The notification should be provided to the AQMD, and they shall identify the time of the breakdown, the specific location of the breakdown, equipment that's involved, the responsible party to contact for further information, the cause of the breakdown, and also the estimated time for repair. Reporting requirements. There's to submit to the AQMD a written breakdown emissions report within 7 calendar days after the reported breakdown has been corrected, but no later than 30 calendar days from the initial date of the breakdown. There's an asterisk there because the executive order officer does have the authority to extend that time frame based on the fact that they have met the minimum requirements. The report shall also provide information substantiating that the breakdown did not result from operator error, negligence, or improper operation or maintenance procedures. It will also substantiate that steps were immediately taken to correct the condition causing the breakdown or to minimize the emissions. They will describe the corrective measures undertaken and or to be undertaken to avoid such breakdowns in the future. Pictures should be included when available of the pictures of the failed equipment. The district response. Breakdowns are assigned to our inspectors. Inspectors will investigate the event. They will inspect affected equipment. They will review records and conduct interviews as needed. They will attempt to determine if the breakdown criteria had been met. 1, was the notification made within an hour? The breakdown did not result from operator error, negligence, improper operation, or maintenance procedures. Immediate steps were taken to correct the conditions which led to the breakdown and resulting emissions are mitigated to the maximum extent feasible. That the equipment in violation is shut down by the end of the operating cycle or within 24 hours from the time the owner or operator knew or reasonably should have known of the breakdown, whichever is the sooner. Inspector will ensure compliance with breakdowns reporting requirements and make a compliance determination. Should the inspector find all breakdown criteria has been met, breakdown protection will be extended to the facility for any rule or permit condition violations resulting from the event. The appropriate compliance action will be taken in the event that it is determined that Rule 430 criteria was not met. That's it.
Okay. Paul, go ahead.
Phil, I would make a little suggestion and also a little language inclusion on your middle square box, reporting requirements. You might want to slip in there too, a disgruntled employee. Because you get some of these characters that when you fire them, you know how that goes. And nobody knows until the damage is done. And that's not really addressed there, other than the fact if the maintenance wasn't done well or the other issues. But put that in there as additional language. It'd probably be helpful.
Well, I can put it in my slides, however, the rule doesn't address it, and I'm not in position to modify the rule.
David?
Thank you for the presentation. My question really pertains to moving forward with this rule, that the rule is on the rule forecast to be modified to comply with EPA's new policy pertaining to startup shutdown malfunctions. And there's certain rules that are being modified or have been modified to try to comply with EPA's rules. However, I believe 36 states have challenged EPA's new policy, and I just read that the administration has asked for a delay in the case as they revisit this policy. So my question really is, what's the plan moving forward, and has staff looked into how to deal with the ever-changing policy that's going on?
I'm not totally familiar with some of the policies and changes that are going on, but it is my understanding that we are addressing all of the federal rules at this time that apply to our ongoing 430 rules.
Do you know when that's going to come up? Right now, there's no date for revising 430.
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
There was an issue a while back that EPA never approved Rule 430. Did they finally approve it?
You mean
I'm
here at
asking-
the district?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the federal.
Nancy, do you know if you guys have been working with this rule for 20 years?
try the other one.
I think everybody assumed that it had been approved, but it never had.
To the best of my knowledge, Rule 430 has never been SIP approved.
Never been.
And I think that's why, and I'm assuming that's what you mean by federally approved?
Yeah.
It's never been SIP approved. I think that's probably why we're contemplating revising the rule to conform more closely to EPA guidance.
Okay. And then so I don't know what you do in a case like that. The other comment that I had, this response here, should the inspector find all breakdown criteria has been met. So if this breakdown results in an odor, how does the inspector's findings in favor of Rule 430, does that also is the permittee or the facility still liable for an odor violation then under the same circumstance?
If you're associating the odor violation with a public nuisance, they receive no protection for 402.
Okay, so they may get relief from 430, but not 402 then.
Well, 430 is the overriding rule for the breakdown protection, but they won't receive any type of protection for a public nuisance.
Okay, so they're still liable for that then, yes, for an odor violation then.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much, Phil.
Oh, thank you, guys.
What was the helmet for?
It was just a prop to show what enforcement does.
Oh, okay. We know you guys work hard. Thank you.
Don't let the suit food.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good luck out there. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now on to the vehicle scrapping programs overview. Dean? Here he comes.
Thank you, Chairman Benoit. This is an information item that was requested by Dr. Parker before the Mobile Source Committee, and he specifically wanted an overview of the scrap-only programs available for consumers living in the South Coast. So that's what this presentation is to cover. Currently, in South Coast, there exists 3 vehicle scrap-only programs. 2 are administered by the state of California through the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and 1 is implemented by the South Coast SCAQMD as part of our Route 2202 employer rideshare program. The first scrap-only program through the Bureau of Automotive Repair is through their Consumer Assistance Program, and it's funded by, as you can see, the VERF account and the HEPR account through the state of California, and it offers incentives to consumers who scrap their vehicle. They either get $1,000 or $1,500 depending on whether or not they're low income eligible or not. One of the requirements of this program is that the consumer must have failed smog check in order to be eligible for this consumer assistance program to scrap their vehicle. The second retirement program is also implemented through the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and they implement a scrap-only component of the Enhanced Fleet Modernization Program, and it's funded through AB 118. And this program is only available for low-income households, and they receive $1,500 per scrap vehicle. There is no need for the consumer to fail smog check, and it does allow for unregistered vehicles. If you recall, under AB 118, the EFMP program gets about $30 million a year probably 95% of that funding goes to BAR for their scrap-only program. And in fact, this year, BAR ran out of money beginning in January of this year, and so they were referring a lot of consumers to the district's EFMP program, which is a scrap and replace program. And I'll get into that further in the presentation. And then finally, the third scrap-only component is implemented by the district. It's Rule 1610, which offers, what generates mobile source emission reduction credits for compliance with Rule 2202. And basically, we have dismantlers who buy these these vehicles to scrap, and they sell it in the open market for credit for purposes of compliance with Rule 2202. And so the purchase price typically ranges anywhere from $300 to $1,500 based on the value of credits under Rule 2202. So as I mentioned, the district also implements the EFMP and EFMP Plus Up program, but this is only for low-income consumers and who live in disadvantaged communities. And currently, we've probably approved upwards of 1,800 vouchers for low-income households to replace their vehicle with an advanced technology vehicles. So consumers who can document that they qualify under the low-income criteria, which is there's 3 different levels, either 225% of the federal poverty level, 300%, or 400%. They are eligible up to receive a replacement voucher up to $9,500 to replace their old vehicle with a advanced technology vehicle, either a electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid or a conventional hybrid. And they can replace it with a used vehicle with model year 8 model years or newer. And that currently that funding is through this AB 118 for the EFMP base, and for the Plus Up, it comes out of the GGRF fund or the Cap and Trade program. And we currently have funding, authorized funding up to $21 million under the Cap and Trade program. And again, the focus of the EFMP and the Plus Up is to outreach to low-income consumers living in disadvantaged communities, targeting the high-emitting older vehicles that have sufficient remaining useful life. And of course, the larger incentive amounts are if they replace their vehicle with an advanced technology vehicle, either an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid. The program also includes consumer protection and assistance and is subject to audits by the state of California. And again, we've developed brochures regarding the EFMP and EFMP Plus Up program. It's been very successful in the South Coast. Last year we had a waiting list of, our applications were overwhelmed. And so we had to get through that waiting list, and now we're caught up and we're implementing the program.
Very good.
So clearly 94% of the vouchers that we've approved, they do reside in disadvantaged communities. For those 6% that don't, we make available the base program, which is a much lower incentive program. You could see the income level participation, 87% are for households that meet the 225% federal poverty level, and to a lesser degree, the higher percentage achieving the federal poverty level. The federal poverty level, and it varies upon the number in the household, but for a single household, I believe it's $34,000 a year at 225%. For a family of 4, I think it's $54,000 a year for a family of 4. Yeah. And of course, the average fuel economy improvement we've seen from the replacement vehicles is approximately 40 miles per gallon.
That's pretty good.
The replacement types, you can see that 37% is the hybrid electric. God, I can't see what percent is that for plug-in hybrid, but it's 30%. 30%, and for the battery electric, it's 16% for replacement vehicles. So moving forward, we just did sign a grant agreement with the state of California for an additional $15 million from the Cap and Trade program. Last year we signed, most recently under the base program, a $2.5 million grant. We've just, June 1st, we've implemented a new website for this program with an online application. And so we're hoping to streamline the application process so we can handle, we hope to double the number of vouchers this year. And we've invested in a new website to handle online applications.
Dean, a question is, this agreement or whatever it is that you signed?
Yes.
Is that funding contingent on this cap and trade legislation that's going through?
Yes, that is
Sacramento now, or did
No.
it precede it?
It preceded that.
So you've got the money then?
Yes, correct. And the website is the www.replaceyourride.com for our new website.
Paul?
Hey, Dean, question. Let's say that the code enforcement agencies pick up some of these jalopies that are broken down and take them to the tow yard or the tow company. Does AQMD monitor the tow companies when they resell those at auction or whatever they do with those old cars? I don't have a clue. Is there a way to measure that? Because there's got to be thousands of them.
Right. In this program, particular the EFMP program, the consumer would have to demonstrate that that vehicle was in operation for at least 2 years. And if it wasn't, they can't show registration. They can show that it had 2 years of continuous insurance, or that for each of the 2 years, it would have to have some repair invoices by a licensed state of California technician. Okay.
Very good. Any other questions? Very good.
And just my last slide,
Oh,
you could see the number of vehicles scrapped under both the 2 scrap-only program run by BAR, and then our 2015, our vehicle scrapping program for Rule 2202, Rule 1610. So currently, between those 3 programs, we've scrapped close to 20,000 vehicles.
And what's our total average population in the basin right now, vehicles?
It's probably 12 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're making a slight scratch.
Right.
But keep up the good work. And
Thank you.
it's definitely, I've had a lot of constituents in the Coachella Valley are talking about this program, and same with a couple other areas that qualify, and they've all really liked it and are thankful. So thank you.
Yeah, we hope to have a outreach event maybe at that new CarMax facility out in
In Marietta?
Marietta.
Oh, very good.
Exactly.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've had several at the various CarMax location, Ontario and Doherty.
That's their
So-
biggest CarMax now in California. It's really
huge,
huge,
yeah,
and it's doing very
exactly.
well in Marietta.
Right.
I'm just a little bummed it's not in Wildomar, but it's okay.
I can make, I'll give it to Public Affairs and they can make it available to the members of the committee.
That'd be great.
Okay?
Yep.
You bet.
All right, with that, we're on to the monthly reports. They're attached. Any questions on those? Not seeing any. Any other business by the board members? Oh, Rita?
Yes, I wanted to clarify one issue on the follow-up items for last month and bring it back on the agenda with my clarification, because I think there was some misunderstanding. I wasn't here for the board meeting, for the meeting in June. I had a conflict with the Coalition for Clean Air event. But I think my comment was misconstrued to imply that it was related to Rule 1130, and it was not. What it was related to Rule 219, and I made this comment yesterday at the Home Rule Advisory Group meeting, that during the 219 process, the Printing Industry Association, and I think that's where the miscommunication came in, they requested additional clarification on the new record-keeping requirements under Rule 219. So my request was to bring that item to this committee because if you recall at the board meeting, there was that thumbnail of the low VOC material form that was presented by staff, but the rule doesn't make any mention of that form. It just says in a format approved by the executive officer. And the form is nowhere to be found on the district's website or anywhere, hasn't been put forward by staff. So my request was that staff bring forward a presentation on what the actual form is going to look like and to follow up on that request for outreach that was originally put forward by the Printing Industry Association.
Very good. I'm sure Derek will be listening to this meeting later and follow up on that. Yeah, Paul.
Ben, before the end of the year, not today, we're dark next month, but let's say one of the upcoming months, can we get a brief overview on the cap and trade again? Nothing big.
Past is going forward, or we'll hopefully know by then whether or not it's going to continue. Yeah.
Of course.
Right.
But a synopsis of it
Sure.
by one of the staff members. That's all.
You just want to know how much is going to the train, or? Right. Oh, I know, right, it's happening all right now and yesterday, and I was getting texts back and forth from committee members yesterday about what's going on up there, so, yeah. Rita?
Yes, on the informational attachment, it wasn't part of the agenda, so I'm not sure if this is the right format, but it's the rule and control measure forecast as well as the board meeting items. And I just wanted to give a heads up that as far as the small business 1168 adhesives, which is on the board calendar for October, is currently being proposed, and we think this is going to have a major impact on especially small businesses. And in light of the fact that there is a now kind of a blurred lines between consumer products and products used at manufacturing facilities. And I looked up the definition of adhesive in the rule yesterday, and it's basically anything that is used to attach one surface to another. That's the definition of adhesive in a rule. So crazy glue, depending on the size of the container, could be covered. I mean, it could be huge, and the ramifications are that, especially, we're very concerned with the record-keeping requirements in that rule, but it could cross state lines because you may be manufacturing the product outside of California or outside of the district, but if you bring it into the district, you are liable.
Okay. Any other questions? Any public comment? Do our interns want to introduce themselves real quick? So these are, I noticed a group back here of our interns from, so we go, which group you guys working in, and what's your name?
My name is Clea Lerner, and I'm working in LPA.
Very good.
My name is Kendall Ingrell, and I'm in LPA.
Mitchell McMahon, LPA. I think we're all LPA.
Oh, LPA, okay.
Leah Bilodeau. Ruby Robles.
Very good. Thank you guys for joining us.
What school are you from, Ben?
Yeah, that would probably be a better question. What schools you guys from?
I live in Los Angeles, but I go to Voucher College in Baltimore, Maryland.
Oh, wow.
I go to Azusa Pacific University.
Very good.
I go to Westmont College in Santa Barbara, and I have a quick question.
Sure.
I noticed during the vehicle scrapping, it was said that the wait list for the EFMP has been pretty much eradicated, like they're done with the wait list. To my knowledge, there was like a huge backup like a month ago. Is that the same wait list, or am I thinking of a different one?
No, we are now current, so we no longer have a wait list, so we're caught up with actively processing new files.
Great.
Great question.
Good question. Yeah.
I'm starting at UC Santa Barbara in the fall.
Very good.
I attend Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, but in September I'm going to study abroad in London for a year.
Oh, what part of London?
Kingston.
Kingston.
On Thames.
Okay. My sister went to Reading, England for a year.
You said
Reading. There's a little town called Reading. It's about 80 miles to the east, near Oxford, but very different.
I had a question too.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what was it?
No,
Oh.
We do require that if it's a model year 2000 or newer, there's a specific cut point that it has to exceed in order to be eligible for the program. But any car model year 2000 or older, we accept without testing criteria.
And the cut point, is that based on fuel economy or?
No, the cut point is based on emission criteria.
Okay.
So typically, if it fails smog check, then we would accept it.
Gotcha. All right. Uh-huh.
I will be a rising high school senior at Privilege Prep in Lafayette.
Very good.
Ben,
Awesome.
would you have him speak up? We got a deaf old guy back here.
Just going out, go through high school, senior high school in La Cañada, right? Yeah. Did you hear everybody else or?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. All right. That brings us to the end of the meeting. We'll be back here September 8th, and we're dark next month, so please no one drive out here next month. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Moving that on through.
Oh, I was here. You were missed. I missed you, yeah.
I'm a political science guy, so I know, I guess going into this, I wouldn't say in a very environment. I'll be back. I'm going to go get her. It's enriched my sort of low understanding up to that point. That's not you getting nervous.
So no, I told you that. So I'm on the even though I represent industry. Public enforcement. For the company I'm with. Yeah. It's just
The sick family who were, growing up with the cops. Okay. See you guys later.
Do you remember Lydia Roman? I'm sure with her, right? And I'm thinking, oh yeah. For you and for us, it's not. It's but for some people, it's like now.
for getting me those. I'm gonna do that really soon. I didn't see that picture in Spanish.
See you. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Hey, Ben, you like sushi? So we meet
Yes.
over in this area. I got some.
Awesome, let's do it. Okay, yeah, just let me know where, if that day
Send a
works,
memo to
send me an
everybody.
invite.
More Rancho or?
Where, no, near you. No, because I'm usually down by, I actually work out of my house 80% of the time, so let's meet here. Yeah, that way I'm on the way.
Yeah,